The Haunted School, Uncovering St. Mary's Darkest Secrets. You won't believe the ending. Chapter 1. The Unveiling. St. Mary's Academy stood proudly atop a hill, its ancient stone walls bearing the weight of countless generations. The ivy-clad facade gave the impression of grandeur and mystery, a place where history whispered through every crevice. For centuries, the school had been a beacon of academic excellence, but beneath its polished surface lay secrets waiting to be unearthed. Alex was among the newest arrivals at St. Mary's. With an inquisitive nature and a fierce determination, he was not one to shy away from challenges. His best friend, Mia, was more cautious, often questioning Alex's relentless curiosity. Still, her loyalty to him was unwavering. The pair had been inseparable since childhood, balancing each other perfectly. Alex, the adventurous spirit, Mia, the voice of reason. Then there was Ethan, the enigmatic newcomer who had transferred from another school under circumstances that were never fully explained. He was quiet, almost too quiet, with an air of mystery that both intrigued and unsettled Alex and Mia. Ethan seemed to know things about St. Mary's that no one else did, as if he had been there much longer than anyone realized. As the school year commenced, Alex began to notice odd occurrences. It started with faint whispers that echoed through the corridors late at night when no one else was around. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakably filled with despair. Lights flickered erratically in rooms where no one stood, casting unsettling shadows that danced across the walls. Certain areas of the school were inexplicably cold, even when the sun shone brightly outside. Mia dismissed these events as mere coincidences, perhaps tricks of the mind brought on by exhaustion and the pressures of a new academic year. However, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. His suspicions deepened when Ethan, who was usually reticent, began to drop cryptic hints about the school's past, alluding to dark times long forgotten. One crisp autumn evening, after the rest of the students had retired to their dormitories, Alex convinced Mia and Ethan to join him on an exploration of the school's lesser-known areas. They navigated the labyrinthine halls, guided only by the dim glow of their flashlights. Their footsteps echoed in the silence, the only sound in the otherwise still night. They soon found themselves in a part of the school that was unfamiliar, a wing that seemed to have been abandoned long ago. The walls here were different, cracked and faded, with peeling paint and a sense of neglect. As they ventured deeper, they came upon a door that was unlike any other in the building. It was old, its wood weathered and marked with symbols that none of them recognized. The air around it felt heavy, as if the door itself was a barrier, holding back something ancient and malevolent. "What do you think is behind it?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to remain calm. Alex reached out to touch the door, his hand hesitating just before contact. A shiver ran down his spine, and he quickly withdrew. "I don't know, but it feels wrong." Ethan stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the door as if drawn to it. "This door hasn't been opened in a very long time," he said softly. "Maybe it's best we leave it that way." But Alex was not one to back down from a mystery. "We have to know what's inside," he insisted. "There's something here, something we're meant to find." Mia reluctantly agreed, though she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something they were not meant to see. Ethan said nothing, his expression unreadable as he stepped back, allowing Alex to take the lead. Despite their combined efforts, the door refused to budge, as if it were sealed by an unseen force. Frustrated but undeterred, they eventually decided to return to their dorms, leaving the door and its secrets for another night. That night, Alex's dreams were haunted by visions of children, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. They wore clothing from a bygone era, and their voices were a chorus of sorrowful pleas for help. They reached out to him, their small hands grasping at the air as if they were drowning in a sea of despair. When Alex awoke, drenched in sweat, the images lingered in his mind, refusing to fade. He couldn't shake the feeling that the children in his dreams were somehow connected to the door they had found, and perhaps even to the strange occurrences that had been plaguing the school. The next morning, Alex shared his dreams with Mia and Ethan. While Mia tried to rationalize the nightmares as a result of their late-night adventure, Ethan's expression grew even more solemn. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's more to this school than you know, Alex. The past here is dark, and some things should never be disturbed." Alex felt a chill run through him, not just from Ethan's words, but from the knowledge that whatever they had stumbled upon was only the beginning. St. Mary's Academy held its secrets tightly, but Alex was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Chapter 2: The Dark History. After their unsettling encounter with the locked door, Alex, Mia, and Ethan became consumed by the mystery surrounding St. Mary's Academy. They knew they had to delve deeper into the school's past, convinced that the answers lay in history long buried. Their search began in the school's archives, a dusty, dimly lit room tucked away in a forgotten corner of the library. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment, and the shelves were lined with brittle, yellowed documents that hadn't been touched in years. The trio combed through stacks of records, sifting through decades of forgotten events. As they pored over the old files, they discovered that St. Mary's had not always been a prestigious academy. Long before it became a school, the building had served as an orphanage. The records detailed the lives of many children who had lived there, but one particular event caught their attention, a tragic incident that had occurred decades ago, when several orphans died under circumstances that were never fully explained. According to the records, the orphanage had been under the strict rule of a headmistress named Sister Agnes. Descriptions of her were sparse, but those that existed painted a picture of a woman who was both feared and loathed by the children. The accounts hinted at her cruelty and the severe punishments she imposed, yet there were no explicit details. The documents simply noted that Sister Agnes had mysteriously vanished shortly after the deaths, leaving no trace behind. Rumors had swirled that she had been responsible for the children's deaths, but nothing had ever been proven. The incident was quietly covered up, and the orphanage eventually transitioned into the academy that stood there now. Mia shuddered as she read the final lines of an old newspaper article detailing the tragedy. "It's like she just disappeared off the face of the earth," she muttered, pushing the brittle paper away, as if the very touch of it repelled her. "But why?" Alex wondered aloud, his mind racing. Why would someone like her just vanish without a trace? And what happened to those children? Ethan, who had been quietly reading through another stack of papers, suddenly stiffened. "I think I found something," he said, his voice low. He held up a small, tattered notebook he had discovered hidden among the books. The cover was worn, the pages stained with age, but the handwriting inside was clear and careful. "It's a diary," Ethan explained, his eyes scanning the first few entries. "It belonged to one of the orphans, someone named Thomas." They gathered around as Ethan read the words aloud. The diary entries were filled with the day-to-day thoughts of a young boy who had lived in fear of Sister Agnes. Thomas described the cold, harsh conditions of the orphanage, where the children were forced to endure relentless discipline and hunger. But what caught their attention were the entries that mentioned a secret room, one that none of the children dared to speak of openly. According to Thomas, the room was where Sister Agnes would take those who had misbehaved the most. The punishments carried out there were so severe that the children who returned from it were never the same. Some never returned at all. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the final entry. "I saw her take Peter there tonight," Thomas had written. "He was crying, begging her not to. We all know what happens in that room. I have to do something, but I'm too scared. We're all too scared. Please, if anyone ever finds this, don't let her get away with what she's done." A heavy silence fell over the group as the gravity of Thomas's words sank in. The diary painted a bleak picture of a life ruled by fear and torment, a life that ended all too soon for many of the children in Sister Agnes's care. "This is real," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "Those kids, they were tortured, maybe even killed, and no one ever did anything about it." "We need to find that room," Alex said with grim determination. "It's the key to all of this. If we can find it, maybe we can find out what really happened." But as they left the library, the atmosphere around them seemed to shift. The once familiar halls of St. Mary's now felt menacing, as if the very walls were watching them. The temperature dropped, and with it came the unmistakable feeling of being followed. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward them, every creak of the floorboards echoing too loudly in the silence. The ghostly children from Alex's nightmares began to appear in the corners of their vision, fleeting glimpses of pale faces peering around doorways or disappearing down darkened corridors. Their presence was no longer confined to dreams. They had crossed into reality, bringing with them a palpable sense of urgency and desperation. "They're trying to tell us something," Ethan said one night as they gathered in Alex's room, the only place where they felt safe enough to speak freely. "They want us to know what happened to them. They want justice." But with each passing day, the strange occurrences intensified. Doors that had been securely locked were found wide open. Books flew off shelves with no one near them. Lights flickered incessantly, plunging the trio into darkness at the most unnerving moments. The children's whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the night with a message that none of them could fully comprehend. The haunting presence that had once been a distant worry was now a constant companion. The spirits were growing restless, and time was running out. If they were to uncover the truth and bring peace to the tormented souls of the orphanage, they would need to confront the horrors that had long been buried in the shadows of St. Mary's Academy. Chapter 3: Confronting the Spirits. The revelations from the diary weighed heavily on Alex, Mia, and Ethan. The chilling accounts of Sister Agnes's cruelty and the lingering presence of the spirits in the school pushed them to a decision, one that they knew carried great risk. They needed to confront the spirits directly, to hear their story from the voices of the lost children themselves. After days of deliberation, they resolved to hold a séance. None of them had ever attempted such a thing before, and the very thought of it filled them with dread. But it was the only way to communicate with the restless souls and uncover the truth that had been buried for so long. They chose the old music room for the séance, a place rarely used and far enough from the other students to avoid unwanted attention. The room, with its worn wooden floors and dusty grand piano, exuded an air of melancholy that seemed fitting for what they were about to do. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, the trio gathered around a small table, a single candle flickering in the center. Ethan had found an ancient book in the library that contained instructions for contacting spirits. As they followed the steps, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. Mia, ever the skeptic, tried to remain calm, but even she couldn't hide the anxiety etched on her face. They joined hands, and Ethan began to recite the invocation from the book, his voice steady but tinged with apprehension. The words were in a language none of them understood, but their meaning was clear. They were calling out to the spirits, inviting them to speak. For a few moments, nothing happened. The room was still, the only sound the distant ticking of a clock on the wall. Then, slowly, the temperature began to drop. A cold, unnatural chill filled the air, and the candle's flame flickered violently before extinguishing altogether, plunging the room into darkness. In the pitch black, they could hear it, a faint whispering that grew louder and more intense with each passing second. The voices were many, overlapping in a cacophony of anger and despair. The room seemed to vibrate with their fury, the very walls trembling as if the spirits were trying to break free from whatever held them captive. Suddenly, the whispers coalesced into one clear, anguished voice. "Why did you leave us?" it cried, filled with both sorrow and rage. "Why did no one come to save us?" Alex's heart pounded as the voice echoed around them. "We're here to help," he said, his voice trembling. "We want to know what happened to you." The temperature dropped further, and a ghostly figure materialized in front of them. Translucent and shimmering, it was the figure of a young boy, his eyes wide with fear. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, much like the children in Alex's nightmares. "They heard us," the boy whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "She heard us. She took us one by one." The room filled with more spirits, their forms flickering in and out of visibility. They were all children, their faces pale and gaunt, eyes hollow with the weight of the horrors they had endured. Their voices overlapped once more, telling a story of unimaginable suffering. Sister Agnes had not only mistreated them, she had sacrificed them. She wanted power. Another spirit cried out, this one a girl with long, tangled hair. She used us for her rituals, promising eternal youth and life beyond death. The truth hit the trio like a sledgehammer. Sister Agnes had not just been a cruel headmistress, she had been a practitioner of dark arts, performing rituals that required the lives of innocent children. The sacrifices were meant to grant her immortality, but something had gone wrong. Instead of achieving her twisted goals, the spirits of the children remained trapped in the school, bound to the place where their lives had been stolen. Mia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "We're so sorry," she whispered. "We had no idea." The spirits, their voices softer now, pleaded with the trio. "Help us," they begged. "We cannot rest. We need justice." The seance ended abruptly as the candle relit itself with a sudden burst of flame, and the spirits vanished as quickly as they had appeared. The trio sat in stunned silence, the weight of the spirits' words hanging heavily in the air. "They want us to find that room," Ethan said finally, his voice grim. "The place where the rituals happened. If we can find it, maybe we can put an end to this." Guided by the clues in the diary and the visions from the seance, they set out to find the hidden room. The school, once familiar, now felt like a maze of secrets and lies, each corner hiding a piece of the dark puzzle. After hours of searching, they finally stumbled upon a door hidden behind a tattered tapestry in one of the disused wings of the school. The door was small, barely noticeable, and locked with a rusty, ancient padlock. Ethan produced a set of tools he had brought along, and after some effort, they managed to pry the lock open. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into the darkness below. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and a sense of foreboding settled over them as they descended the steps. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a small, windowless room. The walls were lined with symbols similar to those on the locked door they had found earlier. The room was filled with old, rotting furniture, and the remnants of ritualistic items, candles, bowls, and tattered cloths, were scattered across the floor. But the most unsettling object in the room was a large, ornate mirror that stood against the far wall, its surface covered in layers of dust. It was cracked and dull, yet it seemed to pulse with a strange, malevolent energy. As they approached the mirror, Alex reached out and began to wipe away the dust, revealing the glass beneath. As the surface cleared, they could see their reflections, except something was wrong. There was another figure standing behind them in the reflection, a tall, gaunt woman in a black habit. Her eyes were hollow, her face twisted into a malevolent grin. "Sister Agnes," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. The reflection of the woman in the mirror suddenly moved, even though she wasn't present in the room. Her cold, lifeless eyes locked onto theirs, and she spoke in a voice that chilled them to the bone. "You should not have come here," she hissed. "This is beyond your understanding. Leave now, or suffer the same fate as those who came before you." But Alex, Mia, and Ethan were no longer afraid. The spirits of the children had entrusted them with their final plea for justice, and they were determined to see it through. Sister Agnes may have wielded power in life, but her reign of terror would end here. Chapter 4: The Final Revelation. The hidden room and the ghastly reflection of Sister Agnes had only deepened Alex, Mia, and Ethan's resolve. They knew now that they were up against something far more sinister than they had anticipated. With their newfound knowledge, they resolved to dig deeper, determined to unearth the truth behind the dark rituals and put an end to the haunting once and for all. Days of searching through old records and conducting clandestine interviews with former staff members and alumni led them to a shocking revelation. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, revealing a truth more disturbing than they had imagined. Mr. Graves, the school's current headmaster, appeared to be more than just a benign administrator. Alex discovered a hidden compartment in Mr. Graves's office, containing a collection of ancient tomes and occult artifacts. Among them was a journal, meticulously detailed with notes on various rituals and dark practices, all signed with Mr. Graves's name. The entries revealed a disturbing legacy. Mr. Graves was a direct descendant of a secretive cult that had long used St. Mary's Academy as a haven for their dark rituals. The journal detailed how the cult had manipulated the school's history, using it as a cover for their malevolent activities. They had performed rituals to summon and control spirits, believing that the power derived from these entities would grant them influence and immortality. Sister Agnes had been a pawn in their scheme, a willing participant in the cruel practices designed to maintain the cult's grip on the school. Realization hit hard. Mr. Graves had orchestrated the events that led to the children's deaths, not Sister Agnes. He had used her as a scapegoat while continuing the dark practices to strengthen his own power and control over the school. The spirit's suffering had served to bolster his reputation, masking the true nature of his nefarious activities. The trio's hearts raced as they prepared for the confrontation they knew was inevitable. They had to expose Mr. Graves and end the cycle that had plagued St. Mary's Academy for generations. Armed with the knowledge and protection provided by the spirits, they devised a plan to confront him. Late one evening, while the school was silent and deserted, Alex, Mia, and Ethan approached Mr. Graves' office. The air was thick with tension, and their footsteps echoed ominously in the empty corridors. They forced the office door open, finding Mr. Graves seated behind his desk, a sinister calmness in his eyes. "You've been very thorough," Mr. Graves said, his voice cold and menacing. "But you're too late. My power is beyond your comprehension." Alex stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "We know what you've done. We know about the cult, the rituals, and how you used Sister Agnes as a cover for your dark practices. The spirits have revealed everything." Mr. Graves's expression darkened. "Fools," he spat, rising from his chair. "You think you can stop me? The power I wield is ancient and vast. You are mere children playing at something you cannot possibly understand." With a swift motion, Mr. Graves began to chant an incantation, the room filling with a palpable energy. Dark shadows coalesced around him, swirling in a violent vortex of dark power. The room grew colder, and the temperature plummeted as though the very essence of evil had been unleashed. Determined to stop him, the trio drew on everything they had learned from the spirits. They recited protective spells, their voices united in defiance. Mia, wielding a talisman she had found in the hidden room, focused its energy to counteract the dark forces swirling around Mr. Graves. Ethan, holding a vial of consecrated water, began to sprinkle it over the ritual symbols etched into the floor. The battle was fierce and chaotic, the forces of light clashing with the dark magic of Mr. Graves. The air crackled with energy, and the ground trembled as if the very school was responding to the confrontation. In the midst of the struggle, Alex spotted a series of runes on the wall, marked with the names of the children who had been sacrificed. He knew they were the key to breaking the curse. With a surge of determination, Alex and Mia chanted the names aloud, their voices ringing with urgency. The runes began to glow, their power resonating with the spirits who had been bound to the school. As the spirits' energy combined with their own, they were able to weaken Mr. Graves's power. With a final, desperate effort, they shattered the circle of dark magic that had bound the spirits to the school. The dark vortex around Mr. Graves dissipated, and the spirits, now free, began to fade from the room, their anguished faces showing gratitude. "You may have won this battle," Mr. Graves sneered as he gathered his remaining strength. "But this is not over. I will return, and when I do, I will have my revenge." With those ominous words, Mr. Graves vanished, leaving behind a room that was now eerily quiet. The oppressive weight that had hung over the academy seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of tentative relief. The spirits were finally free, and the school's dark history had been exposed. As dawn broke, Alex, Mia, and Ethan stood in the now serene corridors of St. Mary's Academy. The school had been forever changed by the events of the past few days, but it was no longer a place of fear. The truth had been revealed, and with it, a sense of closure for the restless souls who had been trapped for so long. "We did it," Mia said, her voice filled with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "We freed them." Alex nodded, looking around the now peaceful halls. "But we also uncovered a legacy of darkness that will need to be addressed. Mr. Graves might be gone, but his influence lingers. We need to make sure the school is protected." Ethan placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "We've exposed the truth. That's the first step. Now, We need to ensure that the school's future is one of light and truth, not darkness and deception. As they left the office and walked through the now quiet hallways, they knew their fight had been just one part of a larger battle. The legacy of St. Mary's Academy would continue, but with the truth now known, they could help ensure that it would never again be overshadowed by the shadows of its past. Chapter 5: The Aftermath. The air within St. Mary's Academy felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. With the curse shattered, the spirits of the children, once trapped in torment, now glowed with a serene light. They gathered around Alex, Mia, and Ethan, their ethereal forms no longer twisted by anger and pain. Each child's face reflected gratitude, a peace they had long been denied. "Thank you," whispered the spirit of a young girl, her voice barely a breath in the stillness of the room. Her hand reached out as though to touch Alex's cheek, but it passed through him like a cool breeze. One by one, the spirits nodded in silent appreciation, their forms gradually fading into the air. The last one to go was the girl, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and relief. Then she too vanished, leaving the trio standing alone in the now empty hidden room. The room itself seemed to sigh with relief, the dark energy that had once permeated every corner dissipating. The walls, once lined with symbols of dark rituals, now appeared as nothing more than ordinary, aged stone. The furniture, so menacing in the dim light, crumbled into dust before their eyes. It was as if the room was erasing its own existence, wiping away the traces of the horrors that had occurred there. "Was it real?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty as she glanced around. The room was now bare, devoid of any evidence that could prove the horrors they had witnessed. The mirror that had shown Sister Agnes's reflection was now just a cracked, dusty relic. "It was real," Ethan affirmed, his tone resolute. "We saw it, we felt it, but maybe the school is trying to protect itself now to ensure that no one else can use this place for evil again." As they left the hidden room, the door they had struggled so hard to open earlier now creaked shut behind them, Pormouth sealing itself with a finality that sent a shiver down their spines. They knew it would never open again, and perhaps it was better that way. Over the following days, St. Mary's Academy slowly returned to its normal routine. The strange occurrences, whispers in the hallways, flickering lights, cold spots, ceased altogether. The school's eerie atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and renewal. However, the trio knew that beneath the surface, the dark history of the school could never be fully erased. The knowledge of what had happened, of the pain and suffering hidden within the Academy's walls, lingered in their minds. They made a solemn pact to watch over the school, vowing that they would never allow it to fall victim to such darkness again. "We have to make sure that what happened here stays buried," Alex said one afternoon as they sat together in the school's courtyard. The sun shone brightly, a stark contrast to the gloom they had experienced in the hidden room. No one else should have to go through what those children did. Mia nodded in agreement. "And we need to keep an eye out. Just because the spirits are at peace doesn't mean the evil is gone for good." Ethan, always the quiet observer, added, "We've seen what this place can become. It's up to us to make sure it never happens again." And so, life at St. Mary's Academy continued. The trio resumed their studies, their friendships growing even stronger after all they had endured. But they never forgot the truth they had uncovered, the dark legacy that had once threatened to consume them. As the new school year approached, fresh faces arrived at the academy. Among them was a boy, slightly older than most new students, who kept to himself. He carried with him an old, worn suitcase that seemed too heavy for its size. On his first night, as he unpacked his belongings, he pulled out a small book, its leather cover cracked with age. He opened it, revealing yellowed pages filled with neat, careful handwriting. It was a diary, though he had no memory of how it had come into his possession. The last entry, written in a delicate, spidery hand, made him pause. It read, "The ritual was incomplete. The spirits may have been freed, but the power still lingers. The cycle continues, waiting for the next to uncover its secrets." The boy's eyes widened as he read the words. Uncertain but intrigued, he closed the book and placed it under his pillow, unaware that he had just become part of a story much older and darker than he could ever imagine. And so the cycle began anew, the past threatening to repeat itself. St. Mary's Academy stood tall and proud, but within its walls, secrets remained. Secrets that would someday call out to another curious soul, drawing them into the darkness that could never truly be vanquished. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing short story. See you in the next one.